The girl was originally a noble imperial princess, but her mother treated her as worthless trash. Not only did her mother constantly beat and abuse her, but she also ended her life with a knife. This was all because the princess had black gold hair and blue eyes, clearly traits of the imperial bloodline. Yet she possessed the features of the legitimate royal lineage. This made her mother, the emperor's favored concubine, extremely resentful of her, showering affection only on her red-haired twin brother. The young princess could not understand why her mother hated her so much, and even her father, the emperor, had never visited her. Longing for her parents' love, the young princess lived humbly and cautiously. On her 18th birthday, she thought she could finally receive her mother's affection, but instead, her mother stabbed her with a blade. Luyana woke up from the nightmare, only to be scolded by a maid nearby before she could collect herself. "I've been calling you for ages and you're still not responding. Today is Prince Louis's birthday. If you don't want to be punished by Lady Lilia, behave yourself." After finishing her words, the maid slammed the door and left. Luyana looked around the room, finding it oddly familiar. Gazing at her tender, childish hands, she realized she was only 8 years old. Could the long 10 years she had just experienced have been a dream? At that moment, she felt a strange sense of déjà vu. It was as if her mother would suddenly burst into the room, scolding her for ruining her brother's birthday cake. As expected, her small body was dragged by her mother. She was punished by being denied food for 10 days. However, she had dreamed of this incident before. In the dream, it was actually the maid who ruined the cake and framed her. For a moment, Luyana felt a chill down her spine. Could that dream have been a prophecy? Would her tragic death at her mother's hands also come true? Thinking of this, she wanted to escape, but was slapped in the face by her mother. The woman looked down at her arrogantly. "I will only love you if you behave yourself, won't I?" Turning away, her mother locked the girl in the room. During those days of confinement, Luyana replayed the long dream in her mind, although many details were blurry. The main events were shockingly similar. At the same time, she discovered why her mother always loathed her. Her golden hair and blue eyes bore no resemblance to her mother. They didn't even resemble her father. Instead, they were identical to the Empress, who possessed the pure royal bloodline. Due to feudal traditions that passed the throne only to males, the current Empress, though a legitimate heir, could only marry into the imperial family of the Hongxi Empire to bear a crown prince and continue the bloodline. Suddenly, Luyana saw a glimmer of hope. If that dream was indeed a prophecy, there was only one person who could save her from the fate of death, the Empress. She had to find her, though she was born to a concubine. The little princess bore the features exclusive to the legitimate Empress: golden hair and blue eyes, and was hated by her mother for it. On her 18th birthday, she was even killed by her own mother. Having dreamed of her future, Luyana decided to save herself. She must seek out the rightful heir, the Empress. Her golden hair and blue eyes would serve as the best evidence. What her mother had despised about her appearance now became her trump card for survival. She desperately pounded on the locked door. Unexpectedly, the door suddenly opened. Falling to the ground, Luyana barely had time to catch her breath. Suddenly, a noisy commotion erupted. To avoid being discovered by the maid, Luyana quickly hid behind the curtains, knowing her hair color was far too conspicuous. If she ran out recklessly, she would definitely be discovered, so she wrapped herself in the dusty curtain. For the first time, she escaped from the palace where she was imprisoned as a princess, but she had no idea where the Empress's palace was. She accidentally wandered into a maze made of green hedges, aimlessly walking for an unknown amount of time. Suddenly, she noticed the faint scent of roses, and Luyana froze in fear. It was the scent of her mother. Had her mother discovered her escape? Just as she panicked, a silver-haired boy covered her mouth and hid her in a corner. Shortly after, her mother walked by, but she was looking for her son Louis. Though they were twin siblings, the lives of Luyana and Louis were worlds apart. Her red-haired brother, who inherited their mother's traits, received endless affection. Meanwhile, Luyana struggled to survive through repeated beatings and humiliation. "Louis, let's go back. Everyone is waiting for you," the star of the show. Her mother treated her brother with such gentle and loving care, something Luyana had never experienced. She desperately longed for her mother's love, and the more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Tears began falling uncontrollably, leaving the silver-haired boy behind her flustered. "I'm sorry, did I scare you?" He tried to explain clumsily, but the girl cried even harder. The boy gently forced her to look at him, lightly patting her and teaching her to take deep breaths. Luyana gradually calmed down, looking at the boy's bright smile. A scene flashed through her mind. This person had appeared in her dream. Despite being twins, the red-haired prince brother was pampered, while the golden-haired, blue-eyed princess sister lived like trash. Having dreamed of her future death at her mother's hands, Luyana escaped her imprisonment at all costs. Along the way, she encountered the silver-haired boy, who felt oddly familiar. He had also appeared in her dream. Instantly on guard, Luyana asked him what his relationship was with the two people she had just seen. The boy, looking troubled, explained that he was there to attend the birthday party and was instructed by his parents to get along with the second prince. He had planned to deliver his gift to the princess and leave, but he couldn't find the princess anywhere. Observing the girl wrapped in curtains, the boy assumed she was another young lady who disliked the party and had snuck away. Luyana asked why he wanted to meet the princess, because the Empress invited all the nobles. Yet the main star, the princess, hasn't appeared. That's strange. She should at least show up to accept everyone's blessings. Having never celebrated her birthday, Luyana finally realized today was her brother's birthday. That meant it was also her birthday. Without thinking, she muttered, "Today happens to be my birthday too." The boy was slightly surprised. What a coincidence in that case. "This gift is for you." The boy placed a bracelet on her wrist. To prevent her from feeling burdened, he explained, "My parents already prepared a gift for the princess. This is just from me to you since today is your birthday. Let's just say this gift was meant for you all along. Happy birthday." Watching the boy walk away, Luyana felt a warm sense of comfort. "Actually, your gift has already reached its rightful owner. Thank you." She noticed the small crest on the boy's button, a shield with a tiny flower drawn on it. "If I could meet you again, I would definitely ask for your name." Meanwhile, Crown Prince Ludwin was extremely annoyed. His subordinates were persuading him to at least show up briefly at the birthday party for the second prince and the young princess. After all, no matter how much he hated Lady Lilia, those two children were still his half-siblings. Ludwin felt nothing but disdain. He deeply despised that woman and her two children. Ever since that woman appeared, his father had been infatuated with her, neglecting court affairs and abandoning Ludwin and his mother to spend all his time with her. How could Ludwin not hate her? However, his subordinates mentioned that the princess had golden hair and blue eyes, supposedly symbols of the legitimate heir. Utter nonsense. The emperor had brown hair and dark eyes, while the concubine had red hair and red eyes. How could they possibly have a child with golden hair and blue eyes? The outdated rule that women couldn't inherit the throne should have been abolished long ago. Despite this rule, the empress was the one managing all state affairs. Simply because she was a woman, she couldn't become emperor. How ridiculous. Ludwin made up his mind that once he ascended the throne, he would abolish this absurd rule. At that moment, a rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. When the two turned to look, a filthy child poked their head out of the bushes, desperate to survive. The child had decided to no longer endure their mother's abuse, but just as they finally escaped the palace where they were imprisoned, they unexpectedly ran into their half-brother, Crown Prince Ludwin. Luyana was utterly disheartened. Why would she run into him here? She had heard from the maids that the crown prince loathed anyone associated with her mother. Wouldn't this be walking right into trouble? Ludwin, seeing it was just a child, breathed a sigh of relief. But why did this child have the royal family's distinctive golden hair and blue eyes? Ludwin glanced toward Lilia's palace in the distance. Could the rumors be true? Did Lilia's daughter really possess the traits of the legitimate bloodline? The man rubbed his forehead and sighed. He leaned closer to the girl and said, "Luyana, are you playing a game with me?" "Why are you here?" Subordinate Yadin was equally astonished. "Isn't this the princess? Shouldn't she be celebrating her birthday? But look at her, her clothes are in tatters, her shoes don't fit. And she looks terrified and uneasy." Facing the crown prince's questioning, Luyana could no longer hold back. She mustered her courage and said, "I want to see the Empress." Ludwin, of course, refused. He coldly rejected her request, but then noticed Yadin stepping forward to shield Luyana. This baffled Ludwin. "Weren't you once betrayed by that woman? Why are you protecting her daughter?" Yadin couldn't bear to see the girl in such a pitiful state. Suddenly, their argument was interrupted by a growling noise. The girl was so hungry that she was about to faint. She forced herself to say, "I hate my mother," before collapsing into Yadin's arms. Ludwin was slightly flustered. "I didn't mean to scare her into fainting. Should we just send her back to Lilia?" He didn't want to have any connection to that woman, but then Yadin noticed something unusual about the girl. Her frail body was covered in scars and bruises. Ludwin, realizing this, felt troubled. While both were Lilia's children, one was enjoying a grand birthday celebration while the other was abused, forced to flee for her life. Such extreme favoritism was incomprehensible. When he saw the second prince earlier, who shared his mother's red hair and red eyes, he felt no familial bond, but looking at the young princess who shared his golden hair and blue eyes, Ludwin couldn't bring himself to dislike her. Instead, he felt an inexplicable sense of kinship. Luyana slowly opened her eyes, staring at the crown prince holding her. "Where are you taking me?" The doctor seemed to have uncovered an astonishing secret. The 18-year-old crown prince actually had a 5-year-old illegitimate daughter. Just moments ago, Crown Prince Ludwig had brought Luyana into his palace. Maid Maria confirmed multiple times. before finally believing that this was the daughter of Lady Lilia, although both Maria and others had been wronged by Lilia. They felt no hostility toward the princess, as the child was innocent. This, however, made Ludwig feel guilty bringing the child of that vile woman before them. Already weighed heavily on him, but why did no one seem to mind? At this point, Dr. Medic finally commented. After an examination, that apart from the many scars on her body, there were no major health issues. The only concern was malnutrition. A child raised in the royal palace actually suffering from malnutrition. Ludwig wondered what this child had endured. Medic, however, was more concerned with who this child was he had just noticed. That her hair color was identical to that of the crown prince. Could it be, was this the crown prince's child? Ludwig felt a chill under Medic's inquisitive gaze. Medic reassured him that if the child inherited the crown prince's constitution, proper care would restore her health quickly. Ludwig was speechless. What does this have to do with me? Aiden, standing nearby, immediately caught on to Medic's insinuation and tried to signal it with his eyes. However, he asked, does the Empress know about this? Ludwig had not yet dared to inform his mother. Around this time every year she mourned her late sister. If he brought Luyana to see her now, it would surely add to her sadness. Aiden then asked about the child's condition, noting that she appeared much smaller than her peers. Medic replied, yes, she does seem smaller than most 4 or 5-year-olds, but there's no need for concern. Aiden was puzzled. What do you mean? This child is already 8 years old. Medic exclaimed in disbelief, Your Highness, Crown Prince, your child is already this old. Sensing the situation spiraling out of control, Aiden quickly clarified, this is the Crown Prince's sister, Princess Luyana. Medic finally understood. So this is Lilia's daughter? Ludwig snapped, what else could it be? What's going on in your head? How old do you think I am? How could I possibly have a child this big? And doesn't she look like she's only 4 or 5? Isn't it normal for me to have misunderstood? Ludwig's confusion deepened every year. His mother provided Lilia with substantial funds to raise her children. How could the child have ended up in such a state? The money must have all been spent on her son instead. She had likely hired foreign knights, academy professors, and even royal instructors to teach her son. While her daughter was left to suffer abuse and malnutrition, Ludwig resolved that he could not send this child back. Let's find someone to take care of her first, he suggested. Maria eagerly volunteered, let me take care of her. However, Ludwig hesitated. Both Maria and Aiden had been victims of Lilia's cruelty, and he felt uneasy about the arrangement, yet seeing everyone's agreement, he reluctantly approved after the others left. Luyana's consciousness slowly returned, feeling the soft surface beneath her. She suddenly jolted awake, realizing her surroundings. Where am I? She thought, startled. The girl woke up crying, looking at the unfamiliar, luxurious room. She knew she had finally been saved, escaping the control of her twisted mother. Luyana curiously surveyed the room, recalling that before she fainted, she had seen the crown prince. Could it be that he saved me? She pushed open the door to the room. The splendid and dazzling hall in front of her made the girl gasp in admiration, and only then did she notice the new dress she was wearing. A startled gasp made her stumble to the ground, but luckily a large pair of hands caught her. The person quickly bowed and apologized. Hello, princess. I am Maria, the crown prince's personal maid. I will be responsible for taking care of you from now on. However, Luyana, who had never been treated kindly, misunderstood her intentions. The crown prince's maid is supposed to take care of me. Has she kidnapped me? The girl panicked and began begging for mercy, but to her surprise, the crown prince stood right behind her, his expression unfriendly. What do you take me for to speak like that? Luyana was so scared her legs went weak. She clutched the man's clothing tightly, pleading for her life. The look of fear on her face made Ludwig suspicious. He immediately bent down and apologized. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Luyana was stunned. The infamous crown prince was actually apologizing to me. Just then, her stomach growled in protest. The next second, Ludwig picked her up and took her to eat. He asked her what she wanted to eat, but Luyana, who had only ever eaten leftovers, didn't even know the names of any dishes. She could only recall the sweet things she ate in her dreams. Sweet, do you want dessert? Luyana wasn't sure if that was dessert. Perhaps the fear of dying at her mother's hands had left a deep impression on her. Only vague memories flashed by, and she couldn't even remember what the person who gave her dessert looked like in the dream. But her body was still weak and she couldn't eat sweets. Ludwig asked if she wanted to drink some soup she liked. Luyana didn't dare to ask for anything, just soup would be fine. Ludwig set her down on a chair. But the little girl could only rest half her head on the table, just as she nervously waited. She was suddenly lifted up, and to her surprise, the crown prince was holding her and personally feeding her. This made Luyana stiffen, but soon she was distracted by the delicious taste in her mouth. Isn't soup supposed to be cold and tasteless? How is this soup hot with so many ingredients in it? Ludwig looked at the girl eagerly devouring the soup, surprised. It was just ordinary vegetable soup, but she was drinking it so happily. Luyana cautiously asked if she could have another bowl. Ludwig finally realized she had finished it. Thinking the crown prince would refuse, Luyana quickly lowered her head, apologizing and explaining that it was her first time having such soup, so she drank it quickly. Ludwig was stunned. Vegetable soup was a common dish for commoners, yet a princess had never even tasted it before. Ludwig suppressed the anger building inside him. He made a promise with Luyana: tomorrow, I'll make sure you get to drink hot cocoa. This was the first time the little princess felt warmth and care. Looking at the girl's innocent smile, Ludwig couldn't help but feel moved. Even though they only shared half of their bloodline, she was still my sister. The girl was the daughter of my enemy. But Ludwig cared for her deeply, even though they were half-siblings. After learning about the torment the girl had suffered, he decided to protect this sister well. When they finished eating, Ludwig picked up Luyana in his arms. The girl thought he was going to send her back to her cruel mother. But before Ludwig had already visited her palace, it was like a prison, not a place for any human to live. Don't go back to that garbage dump, this is your room now. The luxurious and magnificent bedroom almost blinded Luyana's eyes. She couldn't believe this was prepared for her by the crown prince. The man at this moment was resolute. As your brother, I will never leave my sister behind. Though we only share half of our bloodline, you are still a member of the royal family. As long as you wish, you can stay here forever. Luyana didn't understand why the crown prince would treat her so well that she couldn't help but want to rely on him. After settling Luyana, Ludwig went out and met Aiden. Aiden, the night guard, returned after his shift. When he saw how gentle and considerate Ludwig was toward the little princess, he thought, truly my crown prince is amazing, but Ludwig felt guilty. Because of that wicked woman's schemes, Maria and Aiden had lost their father and he had lost his respected teacher. Although Luyana was his sister, to them, she was the daughter of their enemy. She vowed to take revenge, although she had escaped her mother's claws. Luyana still instinctively woke up from her sleep, but this time there was no abuse from her mother. Instead, it was Maria who brought her a sweet, delicious hot cocoa, which the crown prince had personally delivered early in the morning, to fulfill the promise he made to her yesterday, but Luyana felt guilty. The crown prince hated everything about her mother, so why was he so kind to her in this palace? It was the second time she had felt kindness from someone. She decided to consider it as a favor that she would repay in the future. As they talked, the two grew closer. Maria complained to Luyana about how the crown prince was very awkward and not at all lovable when he was young. But now he had such a lovely little sister like you. Luyana noticed something was off and was about to remind her, when the crown prince suddenly appeared behind them, his tone icy. So this is how my personal maid thinks of me. She had been the princess of the empire but had been abused by her mother since birth. Having never felt warmth, she only experienced being loved when she met her half-brother, the crown prince. Suddenly, a large rabbit fell onto Luyana. It was a birthday gift from Aiden, though her birthday had passed yesterday for the princess. This was the first birthday gift that truly belonged to her. She was overjoyed. The bracelet that fell caught Ludwig's attention. Such an exquisite item surely wasn't from Lilia. He turned around and instructed Aiden to investigate the origin of the bracelet. Lost in joy, the girl tightly hugged the rabbit but couldn't help wondering, what if my mother were as warm as they are? What would I be like? Thinking of this, all the grievances poured out and tears uncontrollably flowed. The torment she had endured over the years made her question her future. Can I also have happiness? With gentle comfort and the effects of chocolate, Luyana finally fell into a deep sleep. This was also thanks to Aiden, who, as a brother, was very skilled at comforting children. However, chocolate couldn't always be the solution to putting her to sleep. Everyone lacked experience in caring for children. Maria suggested they should ask the Empress for help, but was immediately stopped by both Ludwig and Aiden. If Lu's mother knew, she would definitely report it to the Empress, and at this time many years ago. Because of her sister's passing, Lu's mother was deeply affected and could no longer bear children. She also became especially fond of little girls. She showed weakness to her niece, Selena, and took care of her. If Lu's mother knew of Luyana's tragic experiences, it would surely cause her mental distress. Moreover, once Luyana's story spread, she would not only gain sympathy, but also face ridicule because of her only partial royal blood. After all, she was Lilia's biological daughter, so she would definitely return to her birth mother's side. By then, what awaited her would certainly be even more cruel abuse. It might be better to report this to the Empress in a few days. In the following days, under Maria's careful care, Luyana's body recovered significantly. However, the chocolate was confiscated, which made her miss it greatly. Maria served Luyana her meal. She suddenly remembered something and decided to leave for a moment, telling Luyana to ring the bell if she needed anything. But this made the girl feel embarrassed. She feared that calling for help would bring someone else in. Every time she went to the dining hall, the looks from the other maids made her uneasy. Surprise, curiosity, and even disdain. Everyone whispered, "Why is Lilia's daughter staying in the Crown Prince's palace?" So she could only wait obediently for Maria to return. At this moment, Aiden quietly appeared at the door. He confirmed that Maria wasn't around, then felt relieved. What Aiden brought made the girl delighted. It was chocolate. The seemingly cold and indifferent Crown Prince had turned into a super protective brother, arranging every meal for her in a luxurious room. He carried her everywhere and even feared that she might misunderstand him. Despite being busy with official matters, he sent people to explain that it wasn't because he didn't love her, but because his duties kept him from seeing her. Yana didn't mind at all. Because before, she could only see her mother once every week or even a month. Just then, Maria suddenly returned. Oh no, caught eating chocolates, but Maria greeted her with a bright smile. She brought many desserts and snacks. It turned out that Yana had recovered enough for the doctor to approve treats. The little princess finally got to taste the delicious food she had been longing for. The sweet taste enveloped her mouth, making it feel like paradise, but suddenly Ludwig appeared from behind. Yana was startled and began to cough repeatedly. Maria angrily looked at Ludwig. "Look what you've done, you scared the child." Yana huffed, "Couldn't you knock before coming in?" Ludwig teased, "This is my palace. If you ask me politely, I might consider it." Aiden handed Yana a small gift. "This is a gift from my sister." Yana held the gift lovingly, not wanting to let go. Seeing her so happy, Ludwig couldn't help but reflect. The imperial princess, receiving such a small gift, looked as if she had received the entire world. He couldn't help but joke, "You're really easy to please." Yana didn't like this comment. She instinctively responded, "That's too much," but then realized she's probably going to be upset. Just as she was about to apologize, Ludwig took the initiative to reflect on his own actions. "I shouldn't have teased you like that," he said, reminding her not to eat too many sweets since her body had just recovered. Yana recalled their first meeting. Although she was Lilia's daughter, it seemed like the crown prince had always been kind to her. Could it be that he didn't dislike her, she thought, trying to confirm her suspicions. She deliberately requested to have another chocolate cake, although Ludwig was reluctant. He still brought the cake to the girl. It was truly unbelievable. Aiden was still giving suggestions from the side, telling Yana to close her eyes and open her mouth. Something unexpected would happen. Seeing her obediently follow the instructions, Ludwig helplessly muttered, who could resist this? He had no choice but to cut a small piece of cake and feed it to his sister. What else could he do but spoil her? The Empress's daughter had died shortly after birth, and the Count's daughter hoped to take her place. She took advantage of the Empress's affection for her daughter, constantly trying to gain her attention, but others were too foolish and clumsy. She even mistakenly thought she could publicly tear open the Empress's emotional wounds. In recent days, the Empress's mood had improved. Crown Prince Ludwig planned to inform his mother about Yana's situation, but he ran into the Countess in the Empress's palace. The woman, thinking her daughter had firmly attached herself to the Empress, became smug. But she was warned by the Crown Prince, who despised them, to recognize their place. She couldn't hide her greedy nature. As long as the Empress continued to favor her daughter, what could the Crown Prince's opposition do? Her daughter's future would surely soar like a phoenix, and she would never give up. When Ludwig saw his mother, she was enjoying her afternoon tea. The Empress was very happy to see her son. Ludwig wanted to speak to his mother privately and expressed that he wanted to send the Count's daughter, Selina, away. But the girl grabbed his cloak, pleading, "Let me stay too, I'm your sister." Ludwig was shocked by her audacity. "How rude, I only have one sister." He replied, "But she's already dead." These words immediately angered the Crown Prince, who shook off her hand and warned her not to think that being favored by the Empress meant she could try to connect herself to the royal family. One shouldn't overstep. The girl turned to the Empress for help. But the Empress, who had always been gentle, now wore a cold expression and ordered her to leave, warning her that if she spoke disrespectfully again, she would make her regret it. Although the Empress had endured much hardship, she would never let herself be provoked, even after the death of the late emperor and his love affair with someone else. She had still remained steadfast in her duties as the legitimate heir, managing the country efficiently. Seeing his mother's strength, Ludwig finally felt relieved. He told his mother that Princess Yana had been beaten and mistreated by her mother, escaping the palace and being found by him. Due to malnutrition, she was now being cared for in the Crown Prince's palace. The Empress was shocked upon hearing this, and because of Lilia's abuse, the servants in the princess's palace had neglected her. As a result, she had disappeared for several days without anyone noticing. The Empress immediately wanted to go see Yana, although she wasn't her biological daughter. The Empress had visited her when she was born. After all, she resembled her own deceased daughter so much. Just one glance at her was enough to imprint her appearance deeply in her heart. Although the girl was the daughter of a concubine, she looked strikingly similar to the Empress's lost child. Every time the Empress saw this child, the pain of losing her own daughter would be soothed. However, as Empress, frequent visits to the concubine's child would always be met with criticism. Therefore, the Empress had to keep her distance from the girl. She never expected that many years later she would learn that the girl had been tortured and mistreated by her concubine mother. The Empress wanted to see her, but hesitated, not daring to open the door. Maria told her that Luyana's condition was now much better. She could eat, sleep, and especially loved sweet food. The crown prince also said that every time he saw her, she was eating something. She was practically born to eat, but she still had some concerns. As the Empress, she felt it was her failure not to properly care for the children of the harem. Would this child resent her? Seeing her mother hesitate, Ludwig simply pushed the door open. If you're worried, you can go in and take a look. To their surprise, Luyana was currently deeply asleep. Looking at the girl's small body, the Empress couldn't believe that this was an 8-year-old child. How could Lilia be so cruel to her own child? This made the Empress feel incredibly heartbroken. At that moment, the little princess suddenly turned over, and the Empress paused her hand in midair. She lightly patted the girl, comforting her as she continued to sleep soundly. In the office, the Empress summoned the head of the servants to show her the investigation report about Luyana and the princess's palace. The funds allocated to the princess were clearly enough, but very little of it was actually used for Luyana. The rest had been squandered by Lilia. The head of the servants was shocked after reading the report. The Empress stated that from now on, she would personally manage the princess's funds and would take back Lilia's usage privileges. Ludwig reminded his mother that Lilia would surely cause a big scene if she did this, but the Empress was resolute and would not yield this time. If she made a scene, let her come straight to me. A woman who is so cruel to her own child doesn't deserve any mercy. At that moment, a faint sound of footsteps was heard outside the door. It turned out that Luyana, who had woken up and was hungry, came to look for food herself, playing with Aiden. This made Ludwig feel like he was the exclusive food ticket for his sister. It was just about time for dinner, so Ludwig invited his mother to dine together. Luyana only then realized that the Empress was here. At that moment, Luyana suddenly thought that although the Empress was very kind and wouldn't hurt her, it didn't mean she wouldn't dislike her. Which Empress would like the daughter of a troublemaking concubine? She quickly tried to get down from the crown prince's arms to escape the oppressive presence of her mother. She wanted to ask for the Empress's protection but became nervous when she actually saw her. Which Empress would like the daughter of a troublemaking concubine? She struggled, trying to get down from the crown prince's embrace. But she was still carried all the way to the dining room. The Empress noticed that Luyana had become reserved because of her sudden appearance. Ludwig reassured her, "Don't worry, this child won't be unable to eat because of someone's presence." This was indeed true. Luyana was either eating or on her way to eat every day. A plate of delicious steak was placed in front of the girl, but was directly taken by Ludwig and placed in front of himself. The Empress thought she had seen it wrong. The crown prince was actually cutting meat for the princess. When had her son become so gentle? She had heard that previously he had personally comforted Luyana to sleep. The Empress was even more surprised. He had glared at his half-brother Louis, and his attitude towards the count's daughter was also indifferent. Why was he so special towards Luyana? Could it be because the child had the same golden hair and blue eyes as her? If her own child were still alive, they should be about this age, right? They would probably be just as cute as this. After dinner, Luyana had just finished her dessert. It seems like she can easily be tricked with food. The Empress asked her son, "You haven't let her go hungry, have you?" Ludwig defended himself, saying, "You don't know how much this little one can eat. Once she starts eating, she doesn't pay attention to anyone else." Just after saying that, a spoon was brought to her mouth. It turned out that the little princess had invited Ludwig to share the dessert. The Empress gave her son a warning look, saying, "Children also care about what you say. From now on, be mindful of your words in front of her. Don't bully Luyana." Worried that Ludwig wasn't caring for Luyana enough, the Empress suggested bringing the little princess to live with her and raise her. She asked Luyana, "Would you like to live with me?" and tried to tempt her with food. However, Luyana carefully considered the offer. If she wanted to deal with her mother, staying with the Empress would be better than staying with the crown prince. But thinking of how the crown prince, Aiden, and Maria had carefully cared for her these days, Luyana decided to stay. The Empress respected her choice. At that moment, Maria suddenly came in, hesitating and casting a glance at Luyana. Luyana quickly sensed it might have something to do with her mother. She saw Ludwig was about to take her away. She begged, asking if she could listen in, but not wanting Luyana to be involved in adult matters. The crown prince came up with a reason to carry her away. Maria said the princess's maids were searching everywhere for her highness. They hadn't dared to tell Lilia that the princess was missing, only quietly looking for her. These deceitful servants were truly detestable. Before leaving, the Empress asked Maria what kind of dessert the princess liked. Despite being the daughter of a concubine, Luyana had received boundless favor from the Empress. Upon learning that Luyana liked sweets, the Empress sent over a large variety of desserts. Luyana was stunned. Are all of these for me? Can I really accept so many gifts? Among them were beautifully packaged jars of candy. These were flavors Luyana had never tasted before, and the sweetness melted in her mouth, leaving her in delighted surprise. Even the candy jars were made of expensive crystal. Luyana felt a bit uneasy. Why was the Empress being so kind to her? She was overwhelmed by this sudden affection. She couldn't help but fear that if she made a mistake, this kindness would disappear. Seeing you eat so happily, the Empress must be pleased. She had to work hard to please her own mother to avoid punishment, and now simply eating well made the Empress happy. She hesitated and asked again, I can't really do anything for her, can I accept all of these things? The girl's cautious manner made Maria feel sorry for her. At your age, it's enough just to accept gifts. If you really feel bad about it, you can thank the Empress. That was a good suggestion. But Luyana then thought about it. The Crown Prince had also been especially kind to her recently. If she only thanked the Empress and ignored the Crown Prince, wouldn't that be a little inappropriate? After all, they were both good people. Especially the Crown Prince, who seemed like an angel. Perhaps his kindness had caused him to suffer quite a bit. Maria was embarrassed. How strange, Maria thought. The Crown Prince was praised as a good person. The child was still too innocent. Someone as cold and ruthless as him couldn't possibly have suffered. Luyana thought to herself that she was merely a princess by name. Her mother is such a troublemaker. Why don't the Empress and Crown Prince dislike me? Maria, the daughter of a count, was still taking care of her, but Maria said she was more than willing. Anyone who meets Her Highness the Princess will love you. It is an honor to serve Her Highness. As the second highest-ranking woman in the Empire, you must become more confident. Even your mother, Lilia, has not maintained her position. So you must pull yourself together if you feel bad about it. We can make some cookies as a thank you for them, freshly baked cookies so fragrant and crispy. They will definitely like them. However, Luyana remembered that the Crown Prince didn't eat cookies. Maria picked up the little princess and said, then let's give them to the Empress. Luyana felt a sense of joy. Before, it was always her receiving kindness from others, but now she could do something to repay them. I will make some delicious cookies to express my gratitude. Since escaping her mother's control, the little princess had been living a pampered life with the Crown Prince. To show her thanks, Luyana decided to bake cookies herself for them. But despite watching Maria's demonstration and following every step, how did the teddy bear cookies turn into some unknown species in her hands? Luyana even disliked the cookies herself, thinking the Empress and the Crown Prince would never eat them. However, Maria reassured her, saying that the Empress would definitely like them, as they would remind her of the cookies the Crown Prince made when he was young. Luyana thought Maria was just comforting her, then she suddenly realized there was someone else she needed to thank. When Luyana mustered the courage to give the cookies to Aiden. Aiden was overjoyed. Her Highness the Princess made these cookies for us, and they're super cute raccoon cookies. Actually, they were teddy bear cookies. Seeing Aiden so genuinely happy, Luyana felt incredibly satisfied. At that moment, the Crown Prince appeared. Aiden immediately bragged, these cookies are from Her Highness the Princess. Aren't they cute? The Crown Prince couldn't smile. He didn't get any cookies, ignoring Aiden's praises. He coldly said, not cute. Luyana realized that he clearly didn't like them. Maria smiled and said, how could it not be? These look just like the ones His Highness the Crown Prince made when he was younger. Upon hearing this, both of them were shocked. The Crown Prince's embarrassing past was ruthlessly exposed. I actually made the same terrible ones as she did. The Crown Prince couldn't admit his cookies were ugly. He reorganized his words to praise Luyana's cookies. Looking at them carefully, they're actually quite good. She seems to have some talent. Luyana admired Maria immensely. One sentence from her made the Crown Prince praise her cookies, but the Crown Prince was not someone easily manipulated. He was unhappy that his cooking was being compared to Luyana's. Luyana also puffed out her chest and said she could do better than her brother. She blurted out brother, which made the Crown Prince freeze. Did you just call me brother? Luyana suddenly realized her slip of the tongue. What should I do? Will she think I'm rude? She wanted to apologize but was overwhelmed with emotions and couldn't hold back the tears. At that moment, she was embraced by a warm arm. The Crown Prince's gentle voice spoke, you are my sister after all. Everyone was so kind to her. Surrounded by warmth, the little princess gradually fell asleep, still holding onto the Crown Prince's hand, unwilling to let go. Looking at the sleeping girl, she was clearly the daughter of Lilia. But the first time he saw her, he had a different feeling, as if she truly were his real sister. In her dreams, Luyana still worried that her status as a concubine's daughter would cause the crown prince to dislike her. It was only when the crown prince assured her, "I will stay by your side," that she showed a sweet childlike smile. The next day when Luyana opened her eyes, she found the crown prince lying beside her in bed. When the girl woke up and opened her eyes, she was shocked to see her half-brother lying next to her. After the surprise, she quickly closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. From time to time, she stole a glance, once again marveling at how similar their hair color was. Unexpectedly, the crown prince suddenly opened his eyes, scaring Luyana so much that she cried out. The crown prince teased her, saying, pretending to be asleep so obviously, "If you want to look at me, just say it directly. Why sneak a peek? I wonder who you got that habit from." As soon as the words left his mouth, Maria realized the mistake. The crown prince also realized that his words might remind Luyana of her mother and the bad experiences she had. He quickly apologized to Luyana. But the girl wasn't upset. She retorted, "I take after you, your highness. You know everything, but you were pretending to sleep as well." Seeing that Luyana wasn't upset, the crown prince let out a sigh of relief and admitted that she was indeed like him. He then started pacing around the room, asking, "Where am I?" Luyana was confused. Maria reminded her that the crown prince was looking for the biscuits. The biscuits Luyana had made herself the day before. How could they not have his portion? But when she found out that there really wasn't a portion for her, she was so angry that she stormed out. However, Luyana secretly made up her mind to continue working hard to repay the crown prince and everyone else. At that moment, Count Charlotte was selling vegetables to the Empress. Since her daughter had been punished by the Empress for speaking disrespectfully last time, she hadn't had a chance to enter the palace again. She begged the Empress to forgive Selina as she was still just a child. The Empress also felt that treating a child like that was a bit too harsh, so she allowed Selina to enter the palace at noon to meet her. Selina joyfully rushed into the Empress's arms, crying as she apologized and expressed how much she missed the Empress. However, since the Empress had met Luyana last time, every time she saw another little girl, she would think of her. Selina noticed that the Empress was distracted, and at that moment a maid brought in the biscuits Luyana had personally made. A basket full of them, a token of her gratitude to the Empress. The Empress's joy was clearly visible on her face. But this sight stung Selina's eyes. The Empress had never smiled like that in front of her. At that moment, Selina was overcome with jealousy and suddenly rushed forward to knock the biscuits over. Fortunately, the Empress reacted quickly and protected the basket, only a few biscuits falling to the ground, shattered into pieces. This act completely enraged the Empress, who ordered the maid to have her dragged out. The girl realized she had caused trouble and cried out, struggling and pleading for the Empress's forgiveness. But the Empress just looked at the biscuits in her hands with a pained expression, because the Empress had smiled happily upon receiving the gift. And the Count's daughter had been filled with jealousy, deliberately overturning the gift Luyana had made. Her consequence was that she completely angered the Empress and was mercilessly expelled from the palace. Selina recalled the first time she saw the Empress. The beautiful and graceful Empress stood high on her throne, radiating with such brilliance. From that moment on, she dreamed of one day becoming the most dazzling presence, just like the Empress. Since then, whenever she had the chance, she would try to make her presence known to the Queen, deeply understanding the Queen's preference for girls after losing her daughter. She believed that as long as she captured the Queen's heart, she could leap from being the daughter of an earl to becoming the Queen's cherished favorite. But everything changed with the appearance of that girl. Usually Serena, who had always been proud and arrogant because of her status as the Queen's niece, was now despised by the Queen. The noble girls, of course, seized the opportunity to mock and ridicule her, calling her a princess wannabe who was full of princess syndrome. They deliberately provoked her by saying she was daydreaming about becoming a princess, while the Queen treated Lyanna like her own daughter. This drove Serena to the brink of madness. She stormed away in fury, seething with hatred for Lyanna to the point of gnashing her teeth. The Queen had never smiled at her like that. Why was she so partial to that girl? With her status as the Queen's niece, there was no way she would lose to someone with such a tainted bloodline. Burning with anger, Serena approached her father, the Earl, demanding he force the Queen to get rid of Lyanna. This absurd statement shocked him, making him think his daughter had gone mad. Meanwhile, the Queen learned that Liliana had yet to find the royal princess. She decided to confront her the next day and hold her accountable for misusing the princess's child support funds. The Queen planned to seize custody of the princess, as she invited Lyanna to have lunch with her. Without prior preparation, Maria had no choice but to bring her own childhood clothes for Lyanna to choose from. She planned to later hire a designer to make custom clothing for her, but Lyanna thought this was due to her sensitive status. To avoid bad rumors from spreading, Maria told Lyanna that the Queen was deeply moved by her cookies and loved them dearly. Although Lyanna found this a bit exaggerated, she still felt delighted inside. Looking at the dazzling array of beautiful dresses, Lyanna was overwhelmed with choices. A pink little dress caught her eye. May I try this one? Though she was a princess by birth, the girl had been cruelly abused by her mother since childhood. As a result, she had never worn a decent dress. Now the queen had invited her to lunch. Gazing at the exquisite little dresses, Lyanna chose a new pink one. Maria comforted her, saying, just wear this for now, and tomorrow we'll make plenty of beautiful new clothes for you. However, Lyanna, penniless, wondered how this was possible. Don't worry, the crown prince holds the late emperor's inheritance and is extremely wealthy. He'll cover all the expenses, Maria assured her. Always relying on the crown prince made Lyanna feel a little uneasy. She also doubted whether, as Liliana's daughter, she truly had the right to enter the queen's palace. The queen is your stepmother, so you are also her daughter. Of course you can enter the queen's palace, Maria explained. After a round of grooming and dressing up, Lyanna could hardly recognize her delicate and beautiful reflection in the mirror. Was this really the same filthy girl from before? But when Maria brought out a pair of small red leather shoes, Lyanna shuddered all over. The horrifying blood-soaked scene from her dreams resurfaced vividly before her eyes. The sensation of her mother plunging a sharp knife into her body felt all too real. She retreated in terror. At that moment, the crown prince's voice sounded, if you don't like them, then don't wear them. He reached out and picked the girl up. Today I'll carry her the entire time. If she doesn't walk, there's no need for shoes. Carrying her, he walked out the door. Aiden reminded Maria of the princess's traumatic reaction to the shoes, which made Maria realize something was wrong with the girl. The crown prince asked Lyanna, don't you like shoes? They're very pretty. She replied, it's not the shoes. It's just that the red color is too vivid. From now on, all red things will no longer appear before you. You are a princess, and no one can criticize you, not even Lilia. I will always protect you. The crown prince's words made Lyanna feel deeply reassured. Soon they arrived at the queen's palace as the queen oversaw major state affairs. Every day, this place was bustling with visitors. When they saw the cold and indifferent crown prince holding a girl, they began to whisper among themselves. Especially Lyanna's golden hair and blue eyes became the focus of their heated discussion, feeling the unease of the girl in his arms. The crown prince's sharp gaze swept over the crowd, and the scene immediately fell silent. At this moment, Lyanna noticed a silver-haired man. This was Duke Esteban. Lyanna felt he looked familiar, as if she had seen him somewhere before. Just then, a maid in the crowd saw Lyanna. She was so shocked she turned pale. How could the princess be here? I must report this to Lady Lilia immediately. A long time ago, a beautiful elf was pursued relentlessly by the first emperor. The elf became his empress. To please her, the emperor spent a fortune building the queen's palace, which astonished the empire. Lyanna was awestruck by the luxurious palace. It's so beautiful, but are there really elves in this world? Of course there are, but they never interact with outsiders. They only keep in touch with royal members related to the first empress. During the New Year's banquet, I can take you to meet them. Upon hearing this, Lyanna was super excited. At this moment, a maid named Talon came to welcome them, her attitude warm and friendly. Lyanna found it strange. Why were the people around the queen so kind to her? After all, she was the child of the concubine they despised, yet she openly accepted their kindness. How shameless of me, she thought, sensing the girl's nervousness. The crown prince gently comforted her. When the two arrived, the queen greeted them warmly. Lyanna leaned close to the crown prince's ear and whispered, what should I say to make the queen happy? The queen was utterly charmed by her adorable demeanor. The crown prince directly carried Lyanna to a seat. Seeing the girl was barefoot, the queen asked why. The crown prince simply replied, since I'm carrying her, there's no need for her to wear shoes. Delicious dishes were brought to the table. Lyanna obediently opened her mouth, waiting for the crown prince to feed her. The queen, watching, felt a pang of envy. She wanted to feed the girl too. Just then a servant rushed in. Your Majesty, the concubine has arrived. The crown prince's expression immediately turned icy. This moment would determine Lyanna's future. She pleaded with the crown prince, hoping she could participate as well. But the queen stepped forward to calm her. Stay here and rest for a while. It's been so long since I've seen my daughter. I want to spend more time with you. That single word, daughter, almost brought Lyanna to tears. Even her biological mother had never called her that, despite the tense situation. She felt an incredible sense of security. Was this what it felt like to be protected? A maid knelt on the ground, trembling, as she felt the oppressive aura emanating from the red-haired woman. Lilia had never imagined that her usually timid daughter would dare to run away and seek refuge with her sworn enemy, the queen. Looking at the documents sent by the queen's people, Lilia was seething. Not only did the queen want control over the princess's future expenses, but she also demanded repayment of funds that Lilia had previously misappropriated. Even the maids dared to conceal Lyanna's escape. If they had reported it promptly, she wouldn't be in such a passive position now. Thinking of this, she couldn't hold back her anger and vowed to subject Luana to the harshest punishment. Just then, a man called her name directly. Lilia quickly leaned against the emperor and reached out to stroke his eyes, causing the slightly lucid man to fall back into a deep sleep, looking at the man before her. A malicious thought arose in Lilia's mind, since that girl was so disobedient. Why not turn her into an obedient pet just like her father? Meanwhile, the crown prince was preparing to meet Lilia with the queen. Luana wanted to stop him. She was worried about his safety. After all, in her dream, her future mother would kill her with her own hands. What if she harmed the crown prince too? But how could she explain it to make him believe her? "Little one, are you worried about me?" he teased. "Don't worry, I'm much stronger than you think." Luana still wanted to stop him, but the crown prince had already left. She couldn't just sit and wait. In the garden, Lilia complained about waiting so long for the queen. How rude. The queen's maid wasn't having it. "You were the one who came early." Lilia rolled her eyes. "A mere maid dares to act so arrogant? When my son becomes emperor, I'll raze the queen's palace to the ground." Just then, the queen and crown prince arrived. Lilia's expression changed upon seeing the crown prince. The crown prince cast a disdainful glance at her. The queen directly asked Lilia why she was here. Lilia revealed she was there for the princess's expenses. As Luana's biological mother, she should naturally manage her daughter's funds. The queen retorted, saying that as a princess, Luana's finances should be managed by her, the queen. Lilia was furious. "I am the one who gave birth to her and raised her," the crown prince mocked. "However, Liana seemed unwilling to have been born by you." She threw the misplaced documents in front of Lilia. "These are all health reports regarding the royal princess palace and the princess herself. How do you explain such terrible results? Where did you spend all the princess's funds?" The queen gave Lilia two choices: either give up raising Liana or return all the misappropriated funds. After a moment of silence, the woman let out a cold laugh. "As the queen, you're so concerned about someone else's daughter. Aren't you afraid people will talk about how you can't forget your own deceased daughter? Did you steal another child who looks similar to use as a replacement?" At this moment, the crown prince noticed a small figure nearby. But when he chased after it, he only found a tiny shoe left on the ground. Liana knew how cruel and ruthless her mother could be, so when her mother came to the queen's palace to cause trouble, the little princess, worried about the crown prince's safety, decided to secretly follow. Liana hid under the blankets, pretending to rest. After fooling Maria, she stuffed a doll under the blankets and sneaked out of the palace. She couldn't just sit by and watch someone who had helped her fall into danger. However, she had always gone out with the crown prince before. Now on her own, she was completely lost. After wandering around for a long time, Liana felt bewildered. She didn't even know where they were supposed to meet. But thinking about the crown prince's constant care and concern for her, Liana grew even more determined to find them. Just then, a water droplet suddenly appeared before her, glistening with dazzling light and floating in the air as if guiding her. She hurriedly followed it and soon arrived at the garden where the queen and Lilia were confronting each other. Liana hid in a corner and overheard their conversation. She happened to catch Lilia accusing the queen of using Liana as a replacement because she couldn't forget her deceased daughter, and that she herself had been cursed with misfortune since childhood, bringing bad luck to anyone who interacted with her. Liana's young heart was deeply shaken. Could she really be the source of all this trouble for the queen and the crown prince? Distraught, she wandered into an abandoned palace, reflecting on all that had happened since she ran away. From the beginning, was it a mistake for her to have stayed in the crown prince's palace? Could someone who only brings trouble to others really have any right to exist? That's not true. Suddenly, a voice called out. Liana was startled to see a graceful young girl appear before her. It was her 18-year-old self from the prophetic dream. "It seems you've forgotten everything from the dream. That's actually better. You're on a different path now and won't face the future I did." Before Liana could understand the meaning of her words, the girl vanished. At that moment, the crown prince finally arrived. After finding Liana's lost shoe, he followed the clues all the way to her. Seeing the crown prince's worried expression, Liana felt deeply guilty. She thought her existence was the reason they were so troubled, but the crown prince's next words brought her to tears. "You are my sister. Whatever you want to do is your right." The girl threw herself into his arms and cried uncontrollably. That single word, sister, soothed all her inner unease. It made her feel loved and cherished. Perhaps crying too much, Liana eventually fell asleep. When she woke up, she found the crown prince sleeping beside her. She reluctantly called out, "Brother." In the soothing voice of the crown prince, the girl who had suffered torment since childhood fell into a deep sleep once again, wearing an expensive bracelet. This unusual occurrence caught the attention of the crown prince, and after extensive investigation, along with the shield pattern on the bracelet, it was confirmed that it belonged to the Duke of Esteban's household. The crown prince learned the specifics of that day and did not expect that the duke's son would be as slick as his father. To think he would give such a valuable item to a girl he met for the first time, both the Crown Prince and Aiden found the boy's intentions suspicious. But Maria started shipping them as a couple. After all, even without recognizing Princess Luana's identity, the boy still gave her such an expensive bracelet. Clearly this was love. The boy didn't despise Luana for her shabby clothes at the time, and still gave her a gift. Isn't that love at first sight? The Crown Prince suddenly felt a crisis, as if his cabbage was about to be stolen. He instructed Aiden to investigate the Duke's son carefully. It seemed necessary to meet that person. Meanwhile, the Duke's son Carl Ann was reading a book. When he noticed his father walking toward him with a smile, he immediately felt uneasy. Could it be another summons to some banquet? Unexpectedly, this time the Duke mentioned the bracelet from before. Carl Ann had previously lied, claiming he had lost the bracelet. But the Duke mysteriously stated that he knew who had it. Impossible, no one should know that he had given the bracelet to that girl. Seeing his son's guilty expression, the Duke immediately understood meeting the Empress had been the right move. Earlier, the Duke and the Empress had discussed his well-behaved and sensible son, proposing that he become good friends with the princess. However, the Empress was worried that if the two got too close, it might cause misunderstandings. The Duke glanced at the letters proposing marriage to the princess on the table and explained that this was a win-win solution, since his son was an excellent marriage candidate if he interacted with the princess. It would deter those harboring improper thoughts about her while also dissuading anyone with designs on his son. After all, the children were still young. It was just about making friends. The Duke claimed it was purely fostering friendship, but he secretly hoped the two would become childhood sweethearts. With the Duke's household's assistance, it would help solidify the princess's position despite her current awkward status and teach Lilia and her mother a harsh lesson. Carl Ann, however, had no clue about his father's plans. He just felt uneasy in his heart. Meanwhile, Luana was lying bored in her room when Maria told her that Aiden would visit her soon and had prepared a gift for her. Seeing Maria's excitement, Luana grew curious. She asked Maria what her relationship with Aiden was. Previously, Luana had noticed that Maria would always smile happily whenever she and Aiden made eye contact. So she figured the two must be a good match. Maria blushed and was about to say something when Aiden and the Crown Prince walked in. However, Luana wasn't interested in the gift. Instead, she directly asked Aiden what he thought of Maria, under Maria's frantic hints. Aiden, confused, quickly changed the topic and proudly showed off what she had prepared for Luana. The quantity was so overwhelming that Luana couldn't hold it all, since she had received Luana's cookies. Aiden became convinced that the princess's aesthetic tastes aligned with hers and felt she had found a kindred spirit, but Luana's face turned pale and thought, this is bad. Could Aiden have mistaken those ugly cookies, which even Luana herself found hideous, as her actual preference? The young princess received a gift personally made by Yadin, but she didn't dare to open it. Even the Crown Prince and Maria were somewhat apprehensive. After all, Yadin's sense of aesthetics was quite unique. They couldn't even imagine what earth-shattering creation Yadin might have made if she misunderstood Luana's preferences. Luana wanted to decline, but seeing Yadin's eager expression, she felt extremely conflicted. In that case, I'll just open it and take a look. The Crown Prince noticed Luana's hesitation and offered to inspect it for her. Really? Luana hurriedly stuffed the gift into the Crown Prince's arms, and even Maria nervously urged him on multiple times. The Crown Prince mentally prepared himself, took a deep breath, and opened the box. Then he immediately tossed it to Maria, telling her to burn it quickly. It was the kind of thing that could shave a year off your life just by looking at it. Yadin was deeply hurt. Even her own younger sister utterly despised her creations. Seeing Yadin's dejected look, Luana felt a bit guilty and began to grow curious about what the gift actually was. Why not just keep it for now? Absolutely not, it's detrimental to your mental health. Luana comforted Yadin, who was squatting in a corner, explaining that those ugly cookies weren't to her taste, they just turned out that way by accident. To curb Luana's curiosity, the Crown Prince promised to give her a rare and hard-to-obtain gift instead. Even my brother struggled to get it. It must be something really valuable, right? Are you sure I can have it? Maria suddenly realized the Crown Prince might be referring to that book. No way, he's giving a gift based on his own preferences. How is that any different from Yadin? Maria worried Luana might not be able to accept it. To gauge her reaction, Maria asked if Luana liked reading books at all, just as a precaution, but Luana said she had never read a book before. Maria suddenly realized that a child who had suffered abuse from a young age would hardly have the means to read or even learn to read. She cheered Luana on, let me accompany you as you learn. She immediately picked up a pen and started listing books, planning to read fairy tales to Luana every day. Her earnestness was evident. Luana was a little surprised. She had never imagined someone would read fairy tales to her. Her mother had never done anything like that for her. Even when she was sick, her mother ignored her completely. Even the maids secretly gossiped behind her back, wondering, is this really Lilia's biological child? Luana debated whether she should confess that she could actually read. But she couldn't possibly admit she had learned to read in a dream. Before long, stacks of storybooks were delivered to her room. Today, let's start with the founding story of the first emperor and empress. A long time ago, there was a young boy. He had golden hair that shone like sunlight. One day, misfortune befell his village. During the struggle, the boy met a beautiful elf, a blue-haired, blue-eyed elf who helped him defeat the enemies. Over time, the boy fell in love with the elf and built a magnificent palace to propose to her. The elf accepted the boy's proposal but also set a condition. At this point, the story of the first emperor and empress abruptly ended. Luana felt the story was incomplete, it lacked many details. And what exactly was the condition the first empress had set? Maria explained that it was just a fairy tale and much of it was pieced together from folk legends. But Luana had an inexplicable feeling that the story was true, especially the part about the childhood friend who tearfully gave her blessings to the emperor and empress. Was she really blessing their future? Seeing that the young princess had so many questions, Maria decided to read the story again. But Luana said she remembered everything and began reciting the chapters from memory, word for word. Maria was stunned. Maria randomly selected passages from the story and Luana could recite them all perfectly. Oh my gosh. She remembered everything after just one reading, learned to read in such a short time, and even understood the meaning. Her Highness the Princess is a genius. It's time to officially hire a teacher to tutor her. At this moment, Luana pointed at an illustration in the book and asked, "Where is this?" "This is the kingdom of Teorin, located in the desert." The picture depicted the palace of the kingdom. Luana stared at the image intensely as an overwhelming sense of familiarity flooded her. It felt like she had visited this place in a dream. Meanwhile, Ashel was completely speechless about her brother Yadin's attempt to give the princess a gift. What kind of psychological damage would a young princess suffer from seeing such a thing? But fortunately, the princess never saw it. Maria had thrown it away. Sister Maria did the right thing by tossing it out, but at least she consoled Yadin afterward. Thanks to Maria's care, Yadin didn't have a complete meltdown. Recently, Ashel kept hearing Yadin mention the princess. Even the crown prince and Maria seemed to care for her dearly. Ashel wanted to meet her. Yadin promised to pass along the request, but only after they finished selecting maids and knights for Luana. Ashel couldn't believe how miserable the young princess's life had been before she didn't even have a personal maid. That horrible Lilia is truly heartless. Thinking about how their father was killed by Lilia made Ashel hate the woman even more, but lacking concrete evidence, she could only watch Lilia remain free. The thought made Ashel so emotional that she almost fainted, prompting Yadin to step forward and support her. Despite their feelings toward Lilia, they were kind-hearted people who never directed their anger at the young princess. Ashel only felt regretful. If my health were better, could I have become the princess's personal maid? Ever since Ashel collapsed in the palace, her health had never been the same, even though every doctor claimed there was nothing wrong with her. Yet she still often felt unwell. When the crown prince learned of Ashel's desire to meet Luana, he agreed to take Luana out of the palace to visit her. Yadin was both happy and worried. After all, Lilia had previously attempted to assassinate the crown prince. Would leaving the palace be dangerous? The crown prince believed Lilia wouldn't be foolish enough to act publicly, but there was one thing he couldn't understand. Even though not all parents love their children, a mother like Lilia, who only viewed her daughter as a tool, was truly rare. At that moment, the Empress summoned the crown prince to discuss arrangements for Luana. The Empress found Duke Esteban's proposal reasonable, especially since there were no suitable peers for Luana in the palace. The only viable option was Duke Esteban's son Carlin, but the crown prince was very reluctant. During a previous chance encounter with the Duke while with Luana, the crown prince found the old man overly enthusiastic. Now he realized it was because the Duke had his sights on pairing his son with Luana. The crown prince worried about the implications of having a boy befriend the princess, but then again, he had grown up with Maria and Ashel. With this thought, he had no counterarguments, seeing her son's sulky expression. The Empress laughed and teased him, saying he was jealous. However, as the princess grew up, it was becoming inappropriate for her to always live with the crown prince. The Empress planned to move Luana into the Glory Palace. The crown prince was surprised. Wasn't that the palace their mother specifically built for his sister before she was born? She was actually willing to let Luana live there. It seemed the Empress had come to terms with her daughter's passing. Luana found herself in complete darkness. She realized she was dreaming, and suddenly a hand appeared and fed her something. The familiar sweet taste was identical to what she had once tasted in a dream. Luana looked up and a man smiled at her. "Do you like it?" Before Luana could ask who he was, the man vanished into nothingness. The intense sense of loss woke her up instantly. She clung to Maria, silently sobbing. "Who was that man?" Why did his disappearance make her feel so heartbroken? Meanwhile, Duke Esteban was discussing with his wife about sending their son to be a companion for the princess. Now that an official invitation from Hansha had been issued, the matter was set in stone. The Duchess was a little puzzled back then when Lilia approached the Duke. Wanting Carlin to spend more time with the second prince, the Duke had refused. Now he was voluntarily sending Carlin to be the princess's companion. The Duke explained that the princess's current guardian was the Empress, so befriending the princess had nothing to do with Lilia anymore. After all, no one wanted to get entangled with the scheming concubines of the harem. As for poor Carlin, he seemed unaware that his father had already sold him. The girl had never attended school for a single day, yet she was a photographic genius. She could recite an entire storybook after reading it just once. After finishing her book, Luana felt bored. Maria suggested taking her to stroll in the garden. Seeing the beautiful scenery, the girl was overjoyed. This was her first time playing in the garden. Before, her mother always imprisoned her in her room, away from sunlight. Maria hugged her tenderly, feeling heartbroken. "It's just a small, ordinary garden. I'm sure your highness will see a much bigger world in the future." This was also the wish Maria's father had expressed to her before his passing. Luana hugged the tearful Maria in return, patting her gently to comfort her. It turned out that Maria's mother had passed away shortly after Maria was born, and her father had raised her with great care. Later, her father died while carrying out a mission as a royal knight. Maria had always loved and felt proud of her father. Luana vaguely sensed that the mission might have been related to her mother. If her mother was responsible for Maria's father's death, how could she ever face Maria? But instead, Maria comforted her, telling her not to feel burdened. "After all, you're the beloved princess that everyone likes." From afar, the crown prince overheard their conversation. On that same mission, Yadin's father had also been killed. Losing the relatives of his close friends one after another made the crown prince feel deeply guilty. Even more so, he realized he was keeping the child of their enemy close, by wasn't he just taking advantage of their kindness? Although Yadin had repeatedly assured him that she never blamed anyone, the crown prince still felt extremely conflicted. Meanwhile, Maria used flowers to weave a small ring. Luana followed her example but ended up making a misshapen mess. After much effort, she finally managed to succeed with one. Then Maria wove a larger flower crown and placed it on Luana's head. "You look just like a flower spirit." Luana in turn gave the flower ring she had made. "I've always been so grateful to you." Yadin saw this and wanted one as well. Luana, playing matchmaker, jokingly said she would make them couple rings on the spot. At that moment, she noticed the crown prince nearby, his expression serious. Was he upset that she had picked flowers from the garden? But what concerned the crown prince wasn't that at all. She wanted to discuss something with Luana about her palace, which made Luana's heart skip a beat. Was her brother planning to send her back to the palace? She had escaped from the one where the young princess suffered abuse at the hands of the concubines. She thought she had found sanctuary under the crown prince's protection, only to be told she needed to move out of his palace. Was she panicking? Had she done something wrong? Why was she being sent away? Was she really going back to her old palace? But she didn't want to return. That place was her nightmare. Grabbing the crown prince's clothes, the girl pleaded desperately. "I won't cause you any trouble. Please don't send me back to the princess palace." The crown prince was puzzled by Luana's unusual reaction. Turns out it was a misunderstanding. "How could I possibly send you back to your old residence? I'm moving you to a new palace. Have you heard of the Palace of Honor?" Luana had indeed heard of it. In her impression, only truly extraordinary people could live there. Her mother used to curse the Empress, saying the Empress was too pretentious, insisting on keeping an entire palace reserved for her deceased daughter. Meanwhile, the maids would gossip behind her mother's back, saying she was overreaching to even covet the Palace of Honor. That palace was clearly meant for the Empress's biological daughter, the Crown Prince's own sister. How could she possibly move in there? To the Empress and the Crown Prince, she must just be a stand-in for that child. The girl's worried expression did not escape the Crown Prince's notice. "Don't overthink it," he said. "The reason for choosing that place is simply because it's well-maintained. Whether or not you want to live there is entirely up to you. If you can't decide, we can go see it together now." The Crown Prince's sincere words moved the girl deeply. To have the chance to live with them, even as a stand-in, was something she was willing to accept. The Crown Prince told Luana that in a few days, he would arrange for her to meet a new friend. Luana was aware that because of her mother's reputation, people had a poor impression of her. Even the child who was willing to give bracelets to strangers had called her that daughter of Lilia. And Louis was annoyed by her too. Could there really be someone who wanted to be friends with her? The Crown Prince reassured Luana, "Don't worry. If anyone dares disrespect you, let me know. I'll settle the score with them." The two quickly arrived at the Palace of Honor. Luana was immediately captivated by the white, magnificent structure. Seeing the girl's delighted smile, the crown prince felt relieved and told her, "If there's anything you don't like, we can tear it down and rebuild it." Luana couldn't bear to see such a beautiful place damaged in the slightest, spotting a fountain in the garden. Luana ran over to it excitedly the moment her hand touched the water. The fountain, which had been completed for years, suddenly gushed out water. Luana felt the refreshing coolness of the water and an overwhelming sense of comfort. However, the crown prince and Maria were utterly dumbfounded by what they saw. The girl was surrounded by droplets of water, seemingly summoned by a spirit as she laughed and played. The little girl was unaware that her casual touch had actually summoned a water spirit. The crown prince and Maria stood frozen, watching the girl encircled by water droplets. It was incredibly rare for humans to summon spirits, so rare, in fact, that even princesses with royal bloodlines would only possess the ability to command spirits if they were chosen. Maria found it strange how could Luana, with her lineage from the Pang family, summon a spirit. The crown prince explained, sometimes, a Pang descendant is born with particularly pure elven blood, so it's possible, but right now it doesn't seem like Luana is using any power. Rather, the spirit seems to be amusing her. For now, this must remain a secret, no one else can know about this. Unexpectedly, Luana suddenly fell into the pool. When she was pulled out, she awkwardly laughed and said it was an accident. However, the crown prince knew it was the work of the elves playing tricks. Worried Luana might catch a cold, he took her to the glory palace. He instructed Maria to fetch clean clothes. Luana felt a bit regretful. She hadn't expected to be separated from her brother so soon, and she felt reluctant. But when she saw the luxurious and exquisitely decorated bedroom, she became conflicted. It was such a beautiful room that she instantly loved it. However, thinking about how moving here meant she couldn't see her brother often, she hesitated again. The crown prince reassured her, saying their palaces were close by so she could visit any time. Besides, the glory palace still needed a few months of renovation. For now, there was no need to feel too upset. Luana was taken to change clothes while the crown prince discussed the elves with Yadin. Years ago, when Ashel fainted without reason, the Empress and crown prince investigated the cause. The Empress even contacted the elves, who speculated that Ashel might have been cursed. The crown prince worried that if Luana wasn't the chosen summoner, could she also have been cursed today? He took out a token and instructed Yadin to send people to comb through all the documents and legends. They needed to check if anyone had experienced similar symptoms. Meanwhile, the Empress was also concerned about Ashel's condition. She had long suspected that Ashel's curse might be related to Lilia. After all, someone who was so cruel to her own daughter wouldn't hesitate to dabble in dangerous things. Luana returned in clean clothes, but the crown prince noticed she was still wearing the same old dress from before. He froze. "Are we short on money?" Maria frowned helplessly. "It's not about money, it's about time and manpower. All the skilled designers in the capital are fully booked." Plus, they'd been so busy with other matters that they completely forgot to arrange custom clothing for Luana. That's simple. Just summon the Empire's designers under the royal banner. The crown prince decided to gather all the Empire's clothing designers at the palace to make new clothes for his sister. Maria was shocked. This was the first time the crown prince had used his authority for a personal matter. She was even more excited than the crown prince, looking eagerly at the document stamped with the royal seal. She turned to Luana, held her hand, and excitedly told her, "Soon you'll have an endless supply of new clothes." Then she dashed off to post the announcement, full of enthusiasm. The crown prince took Luana's hand and asked if she liked it here. Luana looked at the new palace with delight and repeatedly asked if she could really live here. "Of course, this will belong to you from now on." The next day, as Luana was reading alone, Maria suggested finding a professor to teach her. A professional teacher can give you more detailed guidance. With your talent, you'll excel even more with proper instruction. But Luana resisted. For some reason, hearing words like teacher and study made her feel uneasy, even fearful, and her mood would worsen. Was it related to the prophetic dream? She couldn't recall the details of the dream, so she could only delay by saying, "Let's wait and see, maybe I'll study later." When Maria reported this to the crown prince, she expressed her concerns, but the crown prince immediately understood. Maria was actually worried that if Luana wasn't perfect enough, other nobles might look down on her because of her bloodline. Luana is a princess. She doesn't need to stoop to meet the nobles' standards. Unless she wants to learn, don't force her. Maria realized she had been overly anxious and had unintentionally underestimated Princess Luana. The crown prince asked about the progress of Luana's new clothes, and Maria replied that the Empire's clothing designers would arrive at the palace tomorrow. The clothing store owner hurriedly rushed to the shop early in the morning and instructed designer Jesse to cancel all orders for the next day. Jesse was completely confused until he saw the royal notification handed over by the owner, at which point he understood. The crown prince was commissioning new clothes for the princess. The 8-year-old princess was finally going to make her debut in the public eye. If the clothes they made were favored by the princess, it would mean endless royal orders in the future. Everyone quickly got to work. They reworked all the previously completed clothes to children's sizes. Jesse looked at the notice in his hands. If the princess wore clothes he designed, his long-held wish would one day come true. The crown prince was puzzled. Why is mother here first when I'm the one choosing new clothes for my sister? The Empress ruthlessly mocked the crown prince, hitting him where it hurt. She turned to Maria and asked, "What's going on here?" Maria, confused, replied, "It's not my business," and noticed the smiling Lady Rue beside the Empress. Did Yadin tip her off? Yadin protested, saying it was just that she had mentioned this to Ashil and Lady Rue happened to overhear. Meanwhile, Luana was calmly eating cake as if everything happening today had nothing to do with her. The crown prince was curious. Last time he met with the Empress, Luana was very nervous, but today she seemed so at ease she didn't even glance at him. At the crown prince's command, a wide variety of gorgeous dresses made their grand appearance. Luana was wide-eyed, they're all so beautiful. The first designer proudly introduced his masterpiece, a beautifully crafted blue evening gown, seeing Luana's interest. Maria led a few little girls in. The crown prince explained that they were changing into dresses to show how they fit. Luana suddenly realized they were trying on the dresses for her. The Empress asked, "Do you like it?" Without thinking, Luana blurted out, "I like it." But the crown prince noticed that Luana hadn't really examined the dress and muttered softly that it was his mother's sudden appearance that had made Luana feel nervous. Luana quickly denied it. "I'm not nervous, I just think it's new and interesting," although it felt awkward the last time she was with the Empress. Now she felt unusually relaxed. "Is it really okay? I really feel fine." The Empress was pleased and reached out to pat Luana's head, but the crown prince beat her to it. The Empress was speechless. Just as she was about to confront him, a voice of surprise interrupted them. "Is this really the crown prince, the one who coldly banished the second prince? He's so gentle and considerate with the concubine's daughter." The murmurs of surprise around them made Luana feel uncomfortable. To shift the attention, Luana casually pointed, "I like that dress. Princess has great taste." A pink-haired designer, Bailey, squeezed in front of Luana. Bailey excitedly introduced a shimmering golden dress, explaining that although it looked ordinary, the fabric was embedded with tiny diamonds that would sparkle under the sunlight. Luana was dazzled by the dress. Both the Empress and the crown prince were also pleased. At Bailey's eager recommendation, the Empress decisively purchased the dress. Seeing the order she had hoped for being snatched up by someone else, the previous designer gritted his teeth in frustration. The concubine, Lilia, was also infuriated. She never expected the designers who were supposed to serve her today to run off to the crown prince instead. This beautiful woman was in a fit of rage, all because the designer had ignored her for just 3 seconds. She was so angry she nearly destroyed the house. Although the maids were used to their mistress's erratic and unpredictable behavior, they were still trembling with fear. Lilia noticed the maid's arm was scratched and bleeding. She pretended to be concerned, soothing her, but actually issued a ruthless threat. "If you want to stay alive, you better listen to me." The maid, frightened, gradually became an accomplice to the wicked concubine's evil deeds. Meanwhile, the Empress and the crown prince were still helping Luana choose clothes, but the Empress's standards were extremely strict. Any detail that wasn't satisfactory was immediately discarded. It was tough on Luana, who was initially excited. But after a long half-day of this, she was exhausted and bored. She looked at the Empress, who was still deeply engaged in discussions with the designers. Quietly, Luana slipped out of the room. Maria suggested she go to the garden to relax and promised to bring her some snacks later. Luana sighed, marveling at the Empress's boundless energy, and slowly walked toward the garden. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound behind her. Luana thought it was Maria returning, but after calling out several times, no one answered. Something didn't feel right. Someone was approaching her in the palace. Was it Lilia? Just then, she heard a shout from behind her. She saw a long-haired knight pinning a young woman to the ground. The knight didn't forget to salute Luana and introduced himself as Sabin. Luana had heard this name before. He was the object of affection of many maids and was known as the roguish knight. Luana noticed the woman being pinned to the ground and wanted Sabin to let her go. But Sabin said the woman was acting suspiciously and was very dangerous. Reluctantly, at Luana's strong insistence, Sabin released her. The woman explained that she meant no harm. She had simply seen the yellow flowers and without thinking wanted to pick one. She explained that those flowers were her late mother's favorites, but Sabin accused her of lying. He explained that these flowers only grew in the palace, and unless the royal family was under threat, ordinary people could never see them. The woman insisted she wasn't lying, and instead of fear, she felt more hurt by not being trusted. Luana believed her. Ignoring Sabin's objections, she let the woman go to apologize. Luana personally picked a bouquet of flowers and handed them to her, and also told Sabin to keep this matter a secret. After all of this, Luana only felt extremely tired.